Hey guys, I'm going to run you through the real property purchase contract here in Hawaii. So, basic overview. When you're buying or selling a property, there is a standard form that the Hawaii Association of Realtors puts out, and your real estate agent will fill that out for you. And it's pretty important that you know what's going on here. Here's the kicker. Most people don't ever actually read this thing. They skip straight to the numbers. I'm going to give you a quick overview so you know what's going on now. Page 1. All right, here on this page, we're looking at agency disclosure. This page 1 is not really what most consumers care all that much about, but the Hawaii Association of Realtors does. It's all about who is your agent, who represents you. Easy enough. Section B, this is important. This is your initial earnest money deposit. Now, when you're making an initial earnest money deposit, that's money that you write a check for or you wire it in the day after you go under contract to purchase a place. Or if you're selling, this is the money that you're going to care about. If the buyer breaches their contract, you, the seller, you get to keep that money. Section C is the offer to buy and the purchase price. So this is the guts of it. This is what everybody cares about. How much are you buying my house for? How much am I paying for that house? What kind of loan am I getting? That sort of thing. People really care about that. Now here's an interesting bit. If you look down here at the end of Section C, should buyer fail to make the initial earnest money deposit or the additional deposit, when due, seller can terminate the purchase contract right away. Now here's where this matters. When you initially put in your earnest money, that's fine. It comes a day or two after you go under contract. But in Hawaii, the practice is to put a second deposit in. That comes about 10, 12 days in. By that time, buyers are overwhelmed. They're not really paying all that much attention because there's just so much going on. So they can easily be a little bit late getting that second deposit down. Now, if you put 10 grand down on day one and then you have to get another 10 grand down and you're a little bit late, this provision right here at the end of Section C, it says the seller can cancel immediately and keep the initial deposit. Don't be late. Section D is about addenda. We have several standard addenda to modify the contract. And some of these, in fact, are not addenda. So the contract here is not written super well. In particular, I'm looking at the lead-based paint disclosure. That's a disclosure statement, not an addendum. But anyway, you'll see several things attached to your contract, most likely. The most common would be the as-is condition addendum. Section E describes the property. Easy enough. Give us an address. Section E2 and E3 and E4 talk about, hey, does any stuff come with it? Yeah, we want the fridge. Yes, we want the AC. More importantly, though, do we want the couch? Do we want the bed? That sort of thing. When we get down to Section F, we're talking about closing and the escrow company. Now, the escrow company is a third party that handles paperwork and money on behalf of the buyer and seller. Okay, so we're going to hire an escrow company, and then they have specific instructions like, hey, when do we close on this property? Meaning, okay, we went under contract today. Do we close on it in 30 days, 40 days, 45 days? When does that happen? Who is the escrow company? And also, how do they parcel out costs for all the transaction costs that happen here in the middle? Well, that gets handled here in Section F. And then Section G deals with title. Title means ownership and the history of ownership of the property. So we have some specific requirements here relating to title, and it's not super interesting, but the one you want to pay attention to is G3. Okay, G3 has to do with vesting and tenancy. And this matters if you are buying the house with someone other than your spouse in particular. So you want to think about, well, what does tenant in severalty mean? What does tenants in common mean? What is joint tenants, tenants by the entirety? I can explain all that stuff, and I'll probably do that in a blog post. But for now, I just want you to flag, hey, I need to pay attention to tenancy and know that tenancy does not mean renting something. It means how you own something. Section F refers to where the money is coming from. Are you paying cash? Are you financing? Are you getting a loan? What kind of loan? What are the requirements here? And in particular, we want to pay attention to H3 and H4. H4 has the buyer's obligations with respect to getting a loan and then making sure you're progressing along the path to final approval of that loan. So there's some deadlines in there. You can very easily, if you're not paying attention to things, you can very easily miss some of these deadlines. So you want to make sure that you're on it with your real estate agent and your lender. Now, when you buy a house, the seller has to disclose everything that they know that's wrong with the place. So they're going to do that in Section I. Section I says, hey, seller, if you know something is wrong with the place, tell the buyer. Here's the tip to sellers. If you know that there's something wrong with the place, make sure that you tell the buyer about that. The number one source of litigation, of lawsuits with respect to real property contracts is the seller's failure to disclose. So make sure you do that. All right, I'm going to skim right through a good bit of this because it's really thick reading. But then we get to Section J, and this has to do with your inspection rights. J1 in Hawaii is the paragraph number. You'll see that over here on the left. That's the paragraph number that refers to your right as a buyer to inspect a property. That means you get to go in there, have a look, or hire a professional to have a look and tell you everything that's wrong with the place. Normally, a J1 inspection, an inspection period, is going to be for about 10 days, maybe 14, something like that. In that time period, for a buyer, it's pretty much a get-out-of-jail-free card. They can cancel for any reason and get their earnest money back if they don't like the inspection. Once that inspection period expires, it's a little bit harder to cancel the contract. And then you get to do a final walkthrough, and you get to talk about existing warranties, and the seller has to remove their stuff from the property. They probably have to clean it and maybe treat for pets and so forth. In Section K, we're talking about staking, and this has to do with buying a single-family home or land, and you want to make sure you know where the boundaries are. And hey, does that wall come onto my property? Who owns the wall? Who owns the fence? Is this guy's house a little bit too close to the boundary line? That sort of thing. In Section L, we talk about termites. You don't want bugs in your house. Section M refers to when you're in a community, like a homeowners association. Well, there's a whole passel of documents relating to the governance of that community, and I can tell you, when you get that stack of papers, it usually comes electronically, but if you printed it out, it would be 300 to 500 pages. Almost nobody reads it. Let me give you the Cliff's Notes here. Read the house rules. The house rules tell you, can you have a dog? Can you have a cat? Can you have more than two? How late can you play loud music? That sort of thing. Section N refers to anything relating to rental property. Okay, so if you're buying a rental, or if you're buying a place that is going to convert from rentals to something else, all right, you get all that information. And then you have several rights throughout the contract period to terminate. That's handled in Section O a couple of different ways. I don't want to go through all that with you, but basically there are various ways that you can terminate the contract. And in some cases you get to sue, in some cases you don't, in some cases you just walk away and everybody's happy. And then there's a whole bunch of other stuff relating to taxes. And then in Q we get to special terms. And this is where it gets interesting. Pay real close attention to what the real estate agents write in here. Real estate agents typically are not trained in law. So you want to pay attention to how this is worded and what it in fact says. Not what the parties thought that it said, but what it in fact says. All right? Then we get to a whole bunch of miscellaneous stuff in Section R, and we can sort of skip through a lot of that. Same with Section F. And then the main thing here at the bottom is go ahead and sign it. And then the seller will also sign if they want to take the offer, or they can issue a counteroffer. And that's the basic overview of the real property purchase contract.